Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest today, Chen. Ron, please tell me where you went to high school.
Yeah, again, thanks for letting me be here. I went to high school for Niles North for just the first couple months. After my first year, I actually transferred to the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, in short, IMSA. It's a boarding school in Aurora, and they're kind of known for being nerds, for being smarter, more educated people.
Oh, nice. What was your major? Or did you introduce yourself to electronics there?
It wasn't high school that I started in, though. At first in high school, I developed an interest in physics, and my parents had to kind of push me off that because there wasn't much of a career in physics, and so they kind of directed me towards electrical engineering, and that's when I took it on, and yeah, that's why I said I wanted to get into.
Oh, great. And then when did you go get your bachelor's?
I got it in 2016, just at the tail end of 2015.
Wow, at U of I?
Yeah,
University of
U of
Illinois?
I, Urbana-Champaign. You know, they're pretty well known for engineering and for drinking a lot, but I never got
Yes.
involved with that.
Yes. And then you went to Oakton College for electronics or electric engineering?
It was not really a degree. It was a certificate that was for automation and controls. So what this was it was a program for something called PLCs, programmable logic controllers. They essentially perform all the kind of functions in the manufacturing environment, things with these robotic arms lifting around loads and carrying out a whole bunch of functions. So I wouldn't necessarily call it electrical engineering. They are related to each other, but it was kind of a new field. It had its own code, it had its own type of programming, it had its own concepts, different from what I did in college.
Interesting. And so, how did Oakton College help diversify your skills when you finished?
I would say it showed me a little more of the real world, so to say. In college, I was learning tons of theory about circuits, about electricity, electronics, but I didn't see too many examples of how it played out in the real world. And it was in Oakton that when I started learning about this kind of technology, about things like PLCs, that I saw, it's like, okay, these are the kind of industries they can use it for, just to perform simple physical tasks that any human can perform, or they can perform some more complicated tasks as well.
Did Oakton help supplement your education from your bachelor's? Do you think it's worth sending adults to educate themselves if they're going back to school or just briefly getting a certificate?
Yeah, I think it is worth doing at least a couple years of it just to see where your interests lie after college. I think just coming out of college, you might tend to think that you're just going to be focused on that one area forever, but taking some courses after college and just stretching and expanding a little bit can help you, like you said, diversify. It can open up your options a bit, and you just might land a job that was different than what you expected to when you first attended college.
Oh, great. And then also, what type of engineer are you? Are you manufacturing or
Electrical.
electrical
So
engineering, like testing electronics?
yeah. So currently I work for a manufacturing company, and I pretty much see the daily play out of the manufacturing process. I've done different sections of it, almost all of which is testing, but I can actually see how it plays out in the real world.
Interesting. And so, like, did Oakton offer you internships or practicums, or like a job, like when you finished, like you Vi?
I didn't get anything job wise out of Oakton necessarily. I'd say it was still a useful experience to have. At least just the certificate just there says that I have some experience in this area in this industry, and it could open up a job for me in the
Yeah.
future. So
Yeah.
that's never wasted time.
Interesting. And what are your hobbies now? Do you play chess?
Yeah, I do quite a bit. I play well. I There's a club on Sunday that I play regularly at. I don't. I wouldn't say I play every single day, but I do. I do enough of it regularly that I I would consider myself a regular. Uh, that's that's something I'm well versed in. Not the best at, but I have more experience than the average person.
When did you start playing chess as a young adult?
As a young adult, I started back in 2019. It was just a decision of my own that I wanted to start up an old favorite activity of mine in my adult years.
Oh,
The
okay.
first time I ever played chess was during high school. I was playing playing in tournaments back then, even though I was always one of the last boards, even the reserves. Like
Oh,
uh,
okay.
in the tournaments that our teams went to, I was pretty far at the bottom, and I would say it was appropriate because I was not nearly as good as I can be now. So yeah, it's like 4 or 5 years ago. That's when I started up again.
What are the keys to success in chess? Is it just like strategy books, or just practicing with a partner, or like online?
It's going to be a lot of learning about strategy and tactics. You have to you have to have a good grasp of both of those and what the differences are to really get good at it. You have to you have to have good planning ability
Mm-hmm.
to see in the future what your next few moves are going to be, what concepts you should use, and you also need good knowledge of tactics, like what needs to be done right now, or you could lose the game, or what you could do right now that gives you a big advantage. So it's both long-term and short-term thinking that you have to verse yourself in.
How do you anticipate the other person's or the partner's strategy? Like, is it through eye contact and expectations that he'll play a certain field, or like a different like chess type, or like how do you find strategy?
It's in terms of anticipating what your opponent does,
Yeah, moves.
it's a matter of seeing what they would do from their position on their end. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
as if you're playing for them. At least
Oh,
that's what I routinely try to do
mm-hmm.
when I play against someone. I try to play their side as well and see. It's like if I were on their side with their kind of position right now, what would I do? What do I look forward to do? And then I think of my response, and
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps progressing from there.
And how many strategies, like, are they based in books, or just like in theory people learn throughout the years of different chess type of strategies?
There's quite a lot of theory that's been developed over hundreds of years.
Mm.
They're just opening lines that have been fleshed out over and over. And in terms of things going past the opening, in terms of general strategy, I guess I can also say that's been quite developed over the years. At least I know back when chess first came out in the first couple hundred years or so, it was all about these big grand attacks where two players would just go all out to hunt down the other person's king. And
Mm.
these days it's much more controlled. It's much more strategic and defensive. It's like a battle of attrition almost.
Oh, interesting. And how many pieces are there in a board?
You're gonna have 8 pawns total on the second row of the board, and the kind of pieces you have you have the two what are called minor pieces, the bishops and knights, and the two heavier pieces, which are called the rooks. It looks like a castle. And the most powerful piece is the queen. There's only one of them for each side. And the most important piece is the king. You need to capture the king or surround the king in order to win.
And then, like, what is the time? Like, do you have like a specific time to beat each other, or like that stopwatch, or is that, like it depends and like till who one wins?
You could play either way. I prefer to play with a clock because the added time pressure changes your decisions. It affects your thinking, and you need to know how to function under pressure. That's why I always play with a clock. But for any casual players, they can feel free to.
It can be an hour until.
Yeah, they can feel free to play without one.
Who's your favorite chess champion of the years?
Favorite champion?
There's a role model. Like there's all these type of like books out there, Queen's Gambit, and all these movies out there. Bobby Fischer.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Fischer is the most famous one. I wouldn't say he was necessarily like my personal favorite player. I would say among the older legends, the older players that I was fond of was Jose Capablanca. He was a very strategic player. He always managed to build a very sound position and just slowly push his opponent off the board. So the polar opposite of him would be someone like Mikhail Tal, who was nicknamed the Magician. He was famous for his sharp, reckless attacks to the point where he sometimes said himself his play wasn't very sound. So, like, they're two very different playing styles that I found quite interesting.
Oh, and how many tournaments have you been in or judged?
I haven't really adjudicated any tournaments myself. Lately I've formed a couple at the Now's Teen Center, just a few impromptu tournaments for kids to just sign up and play. I've played in at least 50 or so tournaments myself so far, both fast-paced ones and longer time ones.
And basically, how does playing chess like help with math skills, organization skills, like people who are into engineering or like SolidWorks? How does that make that eye of like seeing everything 3D?
Yeah, I would say the engineering mindset, just that kind of mindset that needs critical thinking, that needs foresight. I think it lends itself very well to this game. It's just a matter of how much time and effort you put into it. If you're of that kind of mind, if you're very analytical, if you really like breaking down details and just thinking up strategies and solving problems and pattern finding, if you're into that kind of stuff, then it lends itself very well to the game.
And how long do you practice, or you suggest practicing for adults or young adults?
Well, for practice-wise, I think just an hour a day doesn't hurt. If someone's really more devoted to that, they could probably sink more time into it. I would still emphasize quality over quantity. I don't think people get very much out of just spamming quick games. I mean, fast time games where they don't really learn anything and they're just repeating their mistakes over and over. It's like 3 or 4 hours of that is actually a lot less useful than just 1 hour of really learning from top level players, just really digging into the strategies around the game.
And also, like for parents, like how do you just like suggest for for them to like start learning chess, and like do you tutor kids at all?
I would like to. I would like to tutor. I haven't had any opportunities yet. I'd say my level needs to just get a little bit higher for me to comfortably tutor wherever. I'd say for getting kids started in chess, though, it's just a matter of having them first kind of experiment, just learn over the board first. I think that's the best way that they can absorb information when they actually see it play out in front of them, and then they start getting them into lessons, getting them into classes, and have someone actually teach them how to properly do things.
And what's a good age to start for adults so they don't like put the pressure on their child, like first to like sixth grade, or
For
making sure like they start developing game activity and I guess a self-discipline and image, saying they're going to play chess, but it's not too much pressure.
Okay, well, I'd say you can start very early. Where I'm part of a chess teaching firm right now here in Glenview. I go to it after school to a couple of elementary schools, and as early as first, second grade, they're already starting to learn. Some definitely faster than others, but at least probably just expose them to it and see if they really are into it. It's not going to be everyone's game.
Yes. And can you tell me about your passion for photography and travel?
Oh yeah, so all my friends know that I regularly do road trips on my own. So I tend to drive across the U.S. and take mostly nature photography. There are great many natural areas that I go out to, and those are the ones I typically look for when I go out on my own.
Interesting. And like, where did you go? Like Midwest, Florida. What type of states did you visit?
I I've seen most of the Midwest by now, and on the more eastern side, I've let's say I've been to the more rural areas of New York, both of the Virginias, the North Carolina, and I don't think I've quite made it to the East Coast yet. Though I will say this past summer I made it to the West Coast. I took a train ride all the way to Seattle, and I spent a week over there. That was probably the grandest trip I've ever taken so far.
Have you ever seen the Grand Canyon?
No, I haven't, and I probably head there sometime in the future. Though I would say there have been quite a few things I've seen that are actually kind of off the radar. They're not these famous national parks that every tourist talks about when they're in this country. Some of the really great things I've seen, they're in these small state parks. They're just off these beaten paths. I really enjoy finding those.
And what are your favorite cities?
Cities, I don't visit
For nature or for
Right.
action?
I don't visit too many cities, but I'd say my most favorite one so far has been Harper's Ferry. That's in the kind of like the joining point of three states, both of the Virginias and Maryland. It's a Civil War historic town that is the meeting of two different rivers and a mountain valley surrounding it, and there's this town at the bottom of it. It it just looks like such a nice picture. The first time I saw it, I wanted to go there, and finally this fall I got to go there.
And how is your travel photography? Do you have a book or a collection of photos?
So my collection I really only keep on my phone. I copy over to my computer too, just in case. I do run a travel blog. I do blog about it, so I also have a big collection of photos on there and a little exposition on my whole trip, on what I do
nice.
every trip.
How important is to have a blog, like for visiting or just to show your friends or like the social media for you? Like how significant is your blog?
It's it's gotten more it's gotten to be more part of my routine than I thought it'd be. I thought at first when I started writing it, it'd just be this kind of thing that maybe I could try for a year or two, and then it's like, okay, maybe it's not for me. But I actually found I really like documenting things. In a way, I'm analyzing what I'm seeing, kind of like what I'm analyzing over a board. Uh, in a way, I'm analyzing the world as well,
Oh,
and
nice.
so my blog lets me do that, and I consider it kind of like a presentation. Probably some people are a lot less formal about it and don't see it as so much a professional subject, but I kind of like seeing it that way.
And have you been interested in being like an architect or being like a digital design specialist?
It's probably too much of a stretch for me. At least I know I'm not as interested in designing buildings as I would be in looking at nature, looking at the world around me and how it's built. Though some might say I have the mind for it, but it's not really something I consider.
Interesting. Very fascinating about traveling. Have you ever traveled outside of the United States?
Actually, this coming year, I am planning to look at places in Europe that I want to go. So I am making up those plans. I just turned 30 this year, and
Congratulations.
I thought this would be a good decade to really start looking at other parts of the world.
And then also, how long have you been in Toastmasters for?
I have been with this Niles Toastmasters group since 2018, back when it was just a few people, and when it's just you can count them on one hand.
Oh,
and
yes.
and
Yeah.
since then that group has gotten quite big. We really expanded quite a bit, and yeah, I still like heading there every now and then to give a speech, to just keep practicing my presentation ability, my mannerisms, my tone of voice, everything. So it's good to be a part of it.
How important is public speaking for new immigrants and just for adults, like to develop like business skills?
I think it's one of those things that with technology so much more abundant nowadays that people are forgetting about, or people are neglecting, just because they think that they can talk or communicate on social media. It's just not the same thing as presenting to a person, as talking to someone directly or talking to a group of people. It's something that should be practiced
Yeah.
routinely.
Did you ever try debate when you were young, or like ever travel like into communications or anything like that when you're? Or
I would say I don't really have the kind of mind necessary for a debate.
yeah.
It's just I need more time to formulate my thoughts, and I'm not quite as good just forming arguments on the fly and
Yeah.
coming up with instant rebuttals that some people can. My mind just doesn't work that way. But it's yeah. But I've had discussions with people. I've had I've had good conversations with people that don't have that level of pressure behind them.
And do you live in Glenview right now?
I recently moved to Des Plaines. I was in Glenview for a few months, and now I packed up and moved. So they're all kind of almost the same place. But yeah, I got familiar with the Glenview area for a few months. I would at least say it was easier shopping because I lived closer to the shopping centers.
Oh, nice. And how do you like the Glen and Glenview Library and being a patron of the arts?
It's I was at the Glenview Library once, and it was actually for a board game activity,
Oh, yeah.
and so yeah, I've seen some of the city's buildings. It's very well put together,
Yes.
and the Glen area, that's what it's called over there, kind of north from here. It's uh, there's a little park there with
Yeah.
a small lake that I've occasionally biked by or walked by as well.
And this has really been. Do you have any tips for future engineers or parents of engineers?
Let's say for anyone looking more to get into engineering, there's it's just a kind of mindset that you need when you're when you have the ability to calculate, to analyze. And I think all that needs to be next is for that to be trained, is for that kind of mind to receive information. You know, when you have the right kind of mind for it, I think it'll work out.
And can it be like molded when you're young, like in first grade or toddlers? Like,
Yeah, I think so. You just have to try to put your child in those kind of situations, kind of have them break down the steps, and just kind of like train them to look at the world around them that way.
Thank you for your biography and your interest.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for watching Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest, Chen. Ron, it's been very fascinating.